Hello and welcome to another episode of the PropSwap Podcast. We are your hosts, Ian Epstein
and Luke Pergande.
And we are also the founders of PropSwap, the first marketplace to buy and sell sports bets. Thank you so much for joining us. We've got another season coming up. We took a little break for the summer, and we have a lot to get to. We will talk about some of the MLB division races, do a little college football talk, go over some of the big stories that we missed while we were away over the summer. But first, Luke, a little check-in. How was your summer break?
It was good. Brand new scenery for me. I'm in a new condo. I moved from Gold Coast to River North. You can kind of see this PropSwap neon I hung up in the background there. Try to get that more in the frame as we evolve into this season here. But solid summer. Chicago's an amazing city in the summer, and looking forward to football season.
Yeah. No location or furniture changes, decoration changes for me. But yeah, it was a good summer. I was able to do a little bit of traveling outside the country, which was the first time since pre-COVID. So that was nice. And yeah, back refreshed and ready to get the football season underway. But before we get into some football stuff, next week I think we'll do a big NFL-centric pod talking about our favorite, player awards and season-long props for the season. So if you're looking for NFL content, I think a lot of that will come in next week's episode, but still plenty to get to. Before we hop into the sports stuff, I thought we would talk about some of the big stories that happened just quickly, with the number one far and away being the deal between PENN and ESPN. If you missed the news, PENN had purchased all of Barstool Sports and was licensing the Barstool name for their sports books, whether it was retail in person at a PENN casino or the PENN sports betting app was branded as the Barstool app. I think for multiple reasons, which we can get into, PENN basically sold back Barstool to its founder, Dave Portnoy, for $1. But there was a couple of contingencies attached to that, including some non-competes, which my personal opinion is that involves not being able to advertise or take advertising dollars from other sports books. And then if Portnoy does decide to resell Barstool, PENN will get 50% of the proceeds from that. And then out is Barstool, in is ESPN. PENN will be paying ESPN about $2 billion over 10 years. Is that right? And a new ESPN Bet app will be launching this fall. So, Luke, I'm sure, same as me, you had a bunch of people reach out to you when this deal went down. What were your kind of your first couple thoughts about it?
Yeah, Barstool just needs to be a media company. I never really understood the jump into sports betting. Dave Portnoy needed to monetize his company, and Penn National probably was the highest bidder. So I understand, taking the sale from them, but they just need to be a media company. They're a little bit edgy. They swear. They, have some controversial remarks sometimes. So just be a media company. Take advertising sales from a bunch of different companies trying to get the word out and just be a platform. So it makes sense for them. And then on the ESPN side, I love it from yours and my perspective that we still talk to a ton of investors and industry participants who don't view sports betting as a totally quote unquote legal industry yet. And Disney getting into your industry, even though it's just a licensing deal, I think is going to be a really good net positive for the incumbents.
Yeah. Just talking about the Barstool side of things, because I'm sure we'll have more time to talk about the ESPN stuff as that app comes out and we see kind of how much branding will be on the television networks. I'm guessing it's either going to be a lot or a lot. But yeah, I mean, I don't think people fully understand how regulated this industry is, and I don't think Portnoy understood that. I don't think Penn really understood that. And if one Barstool employee said something controversial, Penn didn't have to answer to one body. They had to answer to like 15 different gaming bodies, and they were getting fined, and, they had just to answer for what was said. There was another situation where Barstool was doing a live college football show on a college campus, and they were advertising, High Noon, which is like a alcoholic seltzer. And then they got in trouble for basically mixing gambling with alcohol on a college campus, and like they got in trouble for that and fined for that. And so I think Penn didn't exactly know what they were getting themselves into, and I think they probably decided that the upside was not worth the downside, and having to go in front of these gaming regulators all the time and have their license revoked or have to fire a Barstool employee because of something. So I do think it was probably smart in the long run for Penn to disassociate with a company like Barstool, just given how highly regulated this industry is. Speaking of sports books and changes, another kind of big story is that WynnBet, which is different than the land-based casinos of Wynn, kind of, but same ownership. But WynnBet, which was active in about a dozen different states, including Nevada and Massachusetts, where they have land-based casinos, but 10 other states where they don't have a retail presence, they are shutting down their operations. This is after many talks about them looking for someone to acquire them. Fanatics was seen as a potential buyer, but then that kind of went out the door when they acquired PointsBet instead. And so, this is kind of one of the biggest operators to have started up, invested a lot of money. I mean, they paid Ben Affleck, they paid Shaq, they paid Julian Edelman, and
Shaq had to sell his Sacramento Kings stock. He had ownership in the Sacramento Kings, up and coming team that had an amazing season last year and growing. I can't imagine Shaq's happy about that. I'm sure he got some cash and got some stock in Wynn. Potentially Wynn's a public company. They're a casino company. Maybe he got stock in that parent company, maybe not. But he had to sell his Kings stock. It sucks for Shaq.
Yeah. So any general thoughts? I mean, it was kind of like in comes ESPN, out goes Wynn. The other interesting thing is that they kind of made a note in this press release that TBD on their New York license, which I took to mean that a company like Fanatics could purchase that license from them, or another company that has been, or not Fanatics, because Fanatics is going to get New York access with PointsBet, but the Penn ESPN, Penn did not have access in New York. And obviously ESPN has studios in New York, just a huge presence there, and so that New York license could definitely be sold off to another company like Penn / ESPN Bet. But any other thoughts from that announcement?
Yeah, no, definitely. That's why WynnBet kept that license active so they can flip it. To me, they're definitely out of New York. The tax rate already is 51% in New York. There's no reason to run a business there unless you're just trying to show that you're to all the other states that you're live in New York. But no, it doesn't make sense for Wynn to hold that. So yeah, they'll be out of that. They'll flip that to. I agree. Penn National is clearly the most likely suitor.
Yeah, but I think it just goes to show how tough it is to operate a successful sports book in a state that you don't have a physical presence or an existing database. MGM and Caesars, they've got casinos scattered around the country more so than Wynn does. Obviously, FanDuel and DraftKings entered in with a huge database of fantasy players. But if you don't have one of those two things, it's very tough to make a name. And the amount of money it takes to get to that level is at a certain point, it's kind of a declining return there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see more that comes of that deal. I don't think this will be a sign of things to come for other operators like this. I don't think MGM and Caesars are going anywhere, but definitely a telling sign that both WynnBet and PointsBet basically are shutting down US after a huge investment in this country. Next on the list, and this is kind of close to home for us a little bit, but over the last couple of months, there's been a slight crackdown on these DFS Pick Em style contests. If you don't know what these are, essentially you can pick you have to pick at least 2 over or unders on a player's performance, and the more picks you make, the higher payout it is, and it's you versus the house essentially, not like the traditional daily fantasy, seasonal fantasy where it's you versus your friends, or the traditional DFS where it's you versus a bunch of strangers, but it's all, in a pool of money, and it's, person versus person, but this is you versus the house. And, this is kind of, it was a slow grow, and then all of a sudden the last year or two, it just absolutely boomed, it feels like. As in my opinion, the started to get a little more aggressive in terms of the different picks you could make. So, it started out being like Aaron Rodgers over under 30 fantasy points this week. And then it got down to, I remember this spring, it was like RJ Barrett over under 8 points in the first quarter of a game. And so it started getting kind of more and more minute, and definitely their businesses have skyrocketed. Most notably, Prize Picks and Underdog Fantasy are the 2 biggest players in the space. But the first ripple kind of started at a conference that you attended called Nickel G's, which stands for the National Council of Gaming, National Council of Regulators in Gaming States, something like that.
Legal gaming states.
Yeah, or legislators in gaming states. Yeah, something like that. And a lobbyist for FanDuel kind of hourly spoke about how they felt that this was sports betting, and they were kind of breaking the law by operating an unlicensed sports book. An article in the Wall Street Journal came out talking about this. Obviously, the companies Prize Picks and Underdog, they had something to say about it, basically saying that they operate legally within the fantasy structure that had been set up, ironically, by FanDuel and DraftKings a couple years earlier, but ever since that conference and that Wall Street Journal article, states like New York and Michigan have proposed rules to ban these types of DFS games. Wyoming is sent them a cease and desist letter. Last year, Maryland and West Virginia sent them cease and desist letters, but that kind of went under the radar. And there seems to be kind of a growing, concern over these from these states and regulators. And why I said this was close to home for us is that a company like ours, PropSwap, we also kind of live in this environment where we've had a ton of legal analyses in different states and countrywide, and we feel comfortable in the space that we live in. But it's kind of always up for interpretation. And the person that runs a state one day, it's a different person the next year, and they could have a totally different take on the whole thing. So, what are your thoughts on this whole kind of crackdown?
Yeah, I mean, look, us as entrepreneurs, I'm always going to be in the entrepreneur's corner. So I support what Prize Picks and Underdog and a few different other guys are trying to accomplish. Do I think that do I think it's probably closer to sports betting than ours is? Like with us, obviously you had to make a bet somewhere at a licensed sports book, and then it can be sold on PropSwap. So like there isn't a new wager that's happening on PropSwap, and in their situation, like you mentioned, an Aaron Rodgers over under fantasy points or RJ Barrett in the first quarter points total, like that's probably a new wager. So I'm in support of them. But do I think they'll probably eventually have to get full sports betting licenses? Probably.
Yeah. Or another thing that could happen, and actually Underdog just got approved in Colorado. However, Colorado told them that it had to be over or under fantasy points. They could not offer, more like sportsbook style props. So I think if these stuck with the over under fantasy points, then we're still in the fantasy realm. But if you start basically being able to compile a parlay that you could do at your traditional sports book, that's when I think maybe they're going to cross the line. But once again, Colorado kind of at the forefront always. I love how willing to work with the companies in the industry that the state is. So kudos to Colorado for that. All right, that will wrap up kind of some quick hits on these headlines. Before we get to stake or swap, I thought I wanted to go over a couple of these MLB division races that have been going on over the summer. First, talk about the AL West. If you haven't been following this, the Seattle Mariners are just on a torrid pace this month in August, and they have found themselves back in the mix. However, if you go back to August 8th, the Rangers were 68-46 with a 3-game lead over the Astros and a 6.5-game lead over the Mariners. At that time, the odds to win the AL West were Rangers minus 140, Astros plus 130, and Mariners at 16-1. Since then, the Rangers have gone 6-11, and the Mariners have gone 14-4. The odds now are Astros the favorite at plus 150, Mariners plus 160, and now the Rangers are third to win the division at plus 210. Why do I bring this up? Well, earlier this month, there was a Rangers to win the AL West ticket up for sale on PropSwap with a collect amount of $9,400. There were a lot of buyers interested in this ticket, submitting many bids. Over like a 10-day period, there was a ton of bids that came in for the seller. Just to run through a couple, August 10th, bid of $4,750. August 17th, a bid of $5,400. August 18th, $5,625. But then the bids started to go down. August 20th, a bid of $4,720. And then finally, the seller accepted a bid at $4,850. So in just 2 days, the seller had rejected a bid of $5,625, and then 2 days later accepted it for $775 less. So the seller cost themselves $775 by, I think he was trying to get like $50, $100 more dollars, and in return, 2 days later, he's selling that ticket for $775 less. Now, I should point out that the market value of that ticket today, only a little week, 8 days later, is $3,000. So it was smart of the seller to take that money because he could have cost himself a lot more if he was still haggling. But I know that's a lot of numbers, but the headline there is rejected a bid of $5,625. 2 days later, accepted a bid for $775 less. So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, look, that's a great sale still, to still walk with 48.50, and it collects, it's basically a coin flip. It pays out 9,400. You're accepting 48.50. So, good job. I'm happy for him. I personally don't think the Rangers are going to win that division. So, Bruce Bochy is incredible. He's one of the best managers ever. So for him to turn around that Rangers team is amazing. But I think taking the cash in this situation, especially in hindsight, where it went from 48.50 to being worth 3,000, it was wise.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the seller knew he wanted to get off this ticket, and if you kind of look at our transaction data, you can see he was like countering. He wasn't just flat out rejecting; he was countering, but it was like for like $100 more, like $150 more,
yeah.
And it's like at a certain point, and we'll get to another example here. It's like, I think I get you won't have a price in mind, but at the same time, you got to think like the percentage difference of that. If someone's offering $5,625 and you want $5,700, like what's really the percentage difference there of in the grand scheme of things? Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, look, there's still a month left to go in the season. But yeah, the Rangers could be a victim of just getting hot at the wrong time. But it will be interesting to see if the Mariners can keep up this pace that they've had in August. Can they keep it up in September? Because they could also flame out as well too. There's still a good amount of baseball left to play. Obviously, at the end of the season, it's a lot of intra-division games. So, we'll see. We'll be monitoring this situation. Another division story is in the NL Central, where we had a customer with the Reds to win the division ticket. He bet $137 at 100-1 odds on the Reds before the season to win the NL Central. On July 13th, a bid was submitted for $5,000 on this ticket. Again, he bet $137. The seller countered for $5,300. So he wanted $300 more. off that $5,000 bid. The buyer declined to meet him at $5,300. At the time, the Reds were 50-41 with a 1-game lead over the Brewers and a 7-game lead over the Cubs. Since then, Luke, the Reds are 18-23 and are now 20-1 odds to win the division, and that ticket has a market value of $660. It's still currently up for sale. The seller has since dropped the price, but this one is even more brutal to counter a bid of $5,000 with $5,300, and he's looking like he may, if he does sell it, it'll be in the $600 range, but it may not sell at all at this point.
Yeah. So if you would have taken $5,000 off a $137 bet, that's a 36.5x return on his money. Like, how many people hit 30-1 winners on a baseball ticket in July? Like he could have got off this in July, I believe, or like if not really early August. So yeah, first of all, this is an incredible bet. Like the fact that they were even 100-1 is a great number. I have to imagine that was the best number on the Reds to win the division. Like 100-1 to win a division is crazy. In a crap division. Like the NL Central is terrible. Like the Cubs were supposed to stink. The Pirates were supposed to stink. Milwaukee was supposed to be good, not great, and the Cardinals were supposed to be right in between all those teams. Like, to get 100-1 on an NL Central division winner is awesome. So to me, like not taking profit on that thing was silly. So yeah, and this is a prominent customer of ours, so he knows better. So yeah, I really good bet finding a divisional team, and you just gotta take the cash on that thing, especially at that point in time and at the halfway point of the season.
Yeah, and I think this, I'd have to do a little more research on this, but like I think it's worth considering, like if you're halfway through the season, right, and you bet you have a 100-1 bet, and they're the favorite now, and you have a chance to make a lot of money, but like the could revert back to the mean, right? Like the sports books made them huge long shots kind of for a reason. Now I get things can change and sports books can get things wrong, but like you do have to at the end of the day kind of remember, like this is a team that was not supposed to be good. They're exceeding expectations. I get, yeah, it's a weak division, and maybe you're not worried about the Brewers or the Cubs at that point, but like at the end of the day, it's still a team that was not expected to do well, and you may want to factor in like what their preseason rankings were, what their preseason odds were, and the converse of that would be like if a team was favored before the season and then has a really slow start, kind of look at those to be like, okay, like again, revert back to the mean. Like you can get maybe good value on a team that got off to a slow start. I'm thinking like, the Bengals last year, like they got off to a slow start, but they came back, right? Like, I think that is something to factor in when it comes to selling your bets, mid-season, and then also looking for value opportunities is a reversion back to the mean, which clearly the Reds have done over the last month and a half.
It's a great point. Completely agree that when deciding whether to sell a bet, go try and find the preseason odds, and then obviously if it's on your ticket, or just do some research, and then also when deciding to buy a futures bet, see what their preseason odds were as well, and like what's happened since that point.
Yeah, and look, and clearly he wanted to sell it. That's why he listed it for sale. And it's just tough that they were so close together and couldn't get the deal done. But I'm sure that buyer's happy. But yeah, to your point about strategies and stuff like that, I think that's a good lead in to talk about a new selling course that we're launching. We will have videos on different topics and get more into the weeds on how to use PropSwap, some success stories, and just kind of get more into the weeds and really show customers how you can make money on this. So Luke, I know you've kind of taken this on. What can you tell the people about our new courses?
Yeah, so we just launched. It's about an 11-minute course. You can find it on our Instagrams. The link in our bio on PropSwap's Instagram page. We talk about this first video. Talks about 3 different football-based bets, football-based futures. Obviously, PropSwap specializes in futures. that a single customer based in Iowa made last football season, and how that culminated in him making $75,000 by selling only. We're not even talking about buying in this situation. Selling only, he cleared $75,000 in profit in one football season. And
these were bets that all ended up losing too, yeah?
They did all end up losing. Yep. I'm not gonna. I don't want to give it away, but and it's not free. It's people have been asking us to come out with these videos for a super long time. It's $19.95. We thought that price point was reasonable given what a lot of people charge for picks. PropSwap is not in that business. We don't charge for picks. We do, of course, this free podcast every week. This video is $19.95. It gives you steps, 3 separate bets, and then the insight into why and how this customer made those bets, and then ultimately how he, being one of PropSwap's best customers, made $75K in a 5-month football season.
Yeah, so definitely go check that out on the PropSwap Instagram page. And then if you have any suggestions of videos you would like to see and things you'd like to learn, please feel free to hit us on Twitter, hit us on X at PropSwap, or send us an email, info@propswap.com. We would love to hear what types of videos you'd be interested in hearing, because obviously Luke and I, we've had close to 9 years of experience doing this, so we kind of see the trends and what works and what doesn't work. So please feel free to send us some video topic ideas. We'd love to hear from you. And then before we get into Stake or Swap, we want to try out a new segment, working title, the Sports Trivia segment. We'll work on another name as cool as Stake or Swap, but I thought, to fun for the listeners, fun for us, every week I will ask a little trivia question that has something to do that's timely, or revolves around something that's kind of timely. So without further ado, let's get into this week's sports trivia question. Luke, the Ohio State wide receiver Marvin Harrison Jr. has the most number of Heisman bets and the second highest liability at DraftKings. The last wide receiver to win the Heisman was Devontae Smith in 2020. But prior to him, only one wide receiver has ever won the Heisman Trophy. Who was it?
And folks, I'm not Googling here. Ian's looking at me with my hands on my folded here, so I'm not Googling. Yeah. I want to say Michael Crabtree, but I know that's incorrect. He was nominated. I'm pretty confident, but I do not think Michael Crabtree.
Early 90s.
I don't know.
I think answer is Desmond Howard.
Oh, of course.
In 1991. At that point in time was the first wide receiver to win the Heisman, and was the only one to do it until Devontae Smith, 2020. And now, like I said, Marvin Harrison Jr., the Ohio State wide receiver, has the most number of bets and second highest liability at DraftKings. So take that for what that's worth. And so now it's time for a little Stake or Swap. Sticking on the college football theme, we had week 0 this past weekend, but the full slate kicks off in this weekend, Labor Day weekend. So we'll be talking about one of the quote-unquote sleeper teams, Texas, to win the college football championship, currently 25-1. I will go first. I am staking Texas as going to be the eventual winner of the Big 12 and making the college football playoff. I'll just add a note here. This time last year, TCU was 250-1. However, I did not have the gonads to go that far down the odds board, but something to keep in mind. 250-1 TCU, but I'm liking another team from the Big 12 this year, Texas, 25-1. Outside of their running backs, including Bijan Robinson, every key contributor from their offense is returning, and this includes quarterback Quinn Ewers, who is currently 3rd on the odds board to win the Heisman. If you recall, Texas could have and should have beaten Alabama in week 2 last year. Ewers was knocked out of the game at the end of the first quarter due to injury, and they only lost by 1. And to kind of show the difference in how people are respecting this Texas team this year, Texas was a 21-point home underdog in that game last year against Alabama. They will play again next weekend at Alabama, where Texas is only a 6.5-point underdog. So, I mean, that's a huge difference in the level of respect for Texas this year. And, they are even money favorite to win the Big 12. I think the Big 12 is strong enough. They've got 14 teams, really deep conference. That's a conference that is strong enough where if there's a 1-loss, maybe even 2-loss champion out of there, they have a legit shot to make the college football playoff. So for those reasons, I am staking Texas 25-1 to win the championship.
Great point about TCU. Obviously 250-1 in August last year. So yet again, it pays to bet long shots. I am going to swap Texas for 2 reasons. One is Steve Sarkisian's off the field issues. That was just a weird situation with him leaving the Bama coaching staff. There was like alcohol involved. He was like drinking in the facility, just like odd scenario. So just want to stay away from that.
That was USC. I think you're thinking of USC.
The USC
and then he
staff.
Yeah, and then he kind of like rehabbed himself as the OC to Alabama, and that's how he got the Texas job. But it was the USC job where it was bad news.
It's like why are we drinking at the facility with college kids? Just kind of a weird background with him. He's clearly talented. My God, like he's been on so many elite coaching staffs and knows football, like knows ball incredibly well. I do believe in him on the field. Just some weird stuff that's happened in his past off the field. And then what do you do with this Arch Manning, Quinn Ewers competition?
So,
like, is that gonna Ewers is gonna be like breathing, feel Manning just breathing down his neck the whole year?
Yeah, so that was going to be a point that I was going to make, but I kind of left it off there, which is that I don't have the exact date, but Sarkisian named Ewers the starter very early on in the summer, which I took as a good sign, where it's like, not putting any doubt out there. Like, it's your team. Like, you shouldn't feel like Manning is looking, you should be watching your back. I saw some quotes about like one of the wide receivers talking about like the biggest difference between Ewers this summer and last summer is like his leadership. And so from everything I've read, it seems like Sarkisian is giving Ewers the kind of the keys, and it's his job to lose, and he shouldn't be looking behind his back. But but again, how football's in Texas. If he has one bad game, the alumni could be shouting Manning's name there.
Got a couple uncles that were pretty darn good. So yes, just some stuff to be wary of. But obviously, it pays to bet long shots. This happens every single season, so won't go into all the prior examples we talked about in this podcast, but definitely shop the board. We'll certainly have more staker swaps as the season unravels. To Ian's point, 250-1 TCU made it all the way to the championship.
Yeah, and look, I mean, just because they're even money favorites to win the Big 12 obviously does not make them a lock, but you can either bet them even money, bet 100 to win 100 to win the Big 12, or if you think a Big 12 championship gets them in the playoff, I guarantee you will make more than you will make more than double your money if you get 25-1 and then they make it to the playoff. So just something to keep in mind. Comparing championship odds versus conference odds.
Yep.
And then switching back to baseball, we'll talk about the Philadelphia Phillies. Of course, they got hot over the summer. Bad start, got hot, and then made it all the way to the World Series, where they lost to the Astros. But currently, Phillies are at 20-1 to win the World Series. Luke, we'll start with you. Are you staking or swapping the Phillies?
Yeah. So they are the third best team according to the odds in the National League. Braves, of course, plus 330. They've been just unbelievable this year at DraftKings. LA Dodgers plus 400 at DraftKings, plus 425 MGM. And then the Phillies are the next team after you skip 5 AL teams. So to me, this is a bet on either the Braves or the Dodgers getting upset at some point. maybe it's to the Phillies, maybe it's to another team. And I think back to last year where the Dodgers lost to their rival, the Padres, in the playoffs. So it's a gamble on one of those two teams losing, and then hopefully they can pull off an upset with the other team that's left standing. So 20-1 odds on the Phillies. Went to the World Series last year, have kind of caught fire. Trey Turner still needs to pick up his performance, but solid pitching staff. Bryce Harper's back and playing well. Real Muto's a beast. So good roster. I'll take 20-1.
I am going to swap the Phillies at 20-1. If this was like 40-1, I'd be more into it. But 20-1, you better have like a very legit shot. Clearly they're not going to win the division. They're going to get a wild card spot. But as we see time and time again, bullpen and pitching are really what helps push the team over the edge. And so right now, Philly currently in the league. They rank 11th in strikeouts per 9 innings. They rank 11th in hits per 9 innings, 11th in home runs per 9 innings. I just don't see this pitching staff as being that strong enough to push them over the edge. Again, if this is 40-1, maybe I'd be more interested. But at 20-1, you got to really kind of, I think, have a more legit shot. And then another category I like to look at is run differential. In the National League, the Braves at plus 219, the Dodgers at plus 152. Then a drop off to the Cubs at plus 79. And then you've got the Phillies at plus 68. And so while they are fourth in the league in run differential, that just leads me to believe that I just don't see them springing an upset against the Braves or the Dodgers. And so, if you can't even make it to the NLCS, I don't think 21 is worth it. So for those reasons, I'm going to swap the Phillies at 20-1. So that will do it. Thank you again for tuning in. Hope you guys all had a great summer, and we are excited to be back. Like I said, next week we'll be talking all NFL, so please make sure to tune in. But before you do that, hit the subscribe button, leave us a rating, and then we will talk to you next week.